Welcome into the latest episode of the Betting the Pitch podcast presents the European 2024 knockout rounds. We'll start with a round of 16. We've had 24 clubs, nations, whatever in this competition that have now whittled themselves down to the top two from each group and four of the top third place sides in the six groups. So now it's time for a playoff to determine your Euro 2024 champion. I enter this at the real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. Off an incredible match day 3, 16-2. I don't know that I could do better than that, 89%, but I will be certainly trying as we move forward in the best of the summer soccer competitions. Copa America have a lot to do, or has a lot to do, to live up to it. On today's episode, I will have an ultimate best bet coming end of show, so stick around for that. But I'll go through each of the matchups, and if we have time, I will try to get through the futures and potentially look at the bracket. But that is a little bit lower down the priority. Want to give every game as much time as possible, and I am on a little bit of a tightened schedule. Hopefully everyone can see what they're and hear me, and I think it's just time to get into it. My computer is being a relic like usual, but we'll start on Saturday. So I'm recording this Friday, June 28th in the United States. But we'll start on Saturday with Switzerland and Italy. This entire tournament will be contested in Germany. Probably will be a good, I think, plenty of fans will travel from each of these nations. Potentially some more rooted in the German culture might look a little bit better looking at you, Turkey or Turkey, the English version. But I'll start with Switzerland and Italy. So Switzerland currently a quarter goal underdog right now with all the juice. Over under is 2. Juice more to under than to over. I'll also go through the 2 advanced numbers and try to find the most value that we can find heading into this final round, or I guess this next round, first round of the playoffs. So the Swiss side opened as a quarter goal underdog, minus 130 at BetOnline, SportsBetting.ag. There are links in the podcast descriptions and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. If you're not a member at either of these sites, go get some free money. They are offering that to anyone, any first-time depositors, new signups, et cetera, et cetera. But the Swiss have not been getting bet. It's actually been the Italians, currently a quarter goal favorite. And I can't really agree with the Italians getting bet. Yes, they have great history of defending champions of the Euro from Euro 2021, Euro 2020 contested in 2021. But the Italians' offense has been pretty much non-existent this entire tournament. Yes, they're in a very tough group with Croatia and also Spain, who looks like one of the best teams in this tournament so far. But they also were in with Albania, fell behind early, did score 2 goals, and then sat on their hands and tried to make it as difficult as possible for the Albanians to end up getting back into the match. And then, of course, the late 98-minute I guess equalizer against Croatia. I think it might have saved the Italians and kept them in this tournament. But those things are done, and that was a long time ago, and I'm sure everyone has moved on, is not even thinking about that anymore. With that said, the Swiss were in a great position to win Group A and not even have to see Italy in this round. Unfortunately, a late inability to keep out a Nicolas Füllkrug header from the Germans ended up meaning Switzerland got second place and have to face Italy. This is the battle of 2 second-place finishers and should be a really great way to start this tournament. With that said, the Swiss have not been getting bet, which I was almost locking in minus 130. Want to make sure I get that quarter of a goal of insurance. Not really any insurance, I guess, but if they draw, go to extra time, that would be a winner. I like that Italy's been catching money since then. I'm not in agreement with that. I am very wholeheartedly want to be against the Italians because I don't believe in their offense. And with that said, I also like under because I think Italy will try to take a lead and try to sit on it as we saw against Albania, a much weaker side than Switzerland. Expect the same type of status, strategy, all that sort of stuff from the Italians. And then Switzerland on the other side, I think after taking a lead against Germany and letting that go and it cost them the group, I think they'll be even more hardened to defend. And this has been after an incredible start to the over and to favorites. It's been an under tournament, so I would certainly lean to the Swiss. Unsurprisingly to probably anybody listening, the 2 advanced numbers also of interest to me. Switzerland down to plus 120 to advance. That number has been so interesting to see Italy's side been getting bet, but the Swiss to advance number falling pretty precipitously. And I can tell you as soon as I can get my spreadsheet up. So this number has essentially, so it started at Switzerland plus 115 to get through, Italy minus 140 on the other side. That had climbed 8% to Switzerland plus 125. And Italy had risen to minus 148, but that's since dropped to 120 and minus 145. So we're seeing some stabilization, certainly from where this number has been going or will be going. Dropped 4.17, so just over 4%. Italy, as a favorite, has dropped nearly 6%. So some buyback on the Swiss. I feel like that's a number I'm going to be looking at very closely to make sure I don't lose it. But I'll be most likely betting Switzerland and under in this matchup. Moving next to the nightcap on Saturday, June 29th. That is tomorrow. We have the Germans, and they are facing Denmark. Currently, Germany a 3/4 goal favorite with all the juice. Over under is 2.25, juiced all the way to over. So in terms of movement, Denmark have I guess been getting bet a little bit, but we haven't seen too much movement really. Just a couple of cents at Bet Online. In terms of the total, that has fallen from 2.5 to 2.25, which doesn't really speak to how well the Germans have been playing and how much they've been scoring this tournament. But I think the market realizes that that does not seem to be a likely thing to continue. The Danes were really, I thought, dominant against England, besides conceding a juvenile, really naive early opening goal to the English. Controlled the match throughout, and I expect them to have that same type of strategy against Germany, try to protect themselves by possessing the ball, and I think that they have a good chance to cause some problems for the Germans. Germans, rightly, I think, a big favorite here, though about the same price that Denmark ended up closing to England, just a little bit of a juice difference as a 3/4 goal underdog. I mean, the Danes were awesome in the Euros in 2020, played in 2021, and have been much better in the European qualifications for both the Euro and for the World Cup. We're awful in Qatar, but maybe we let that go after they've looked pretty good, taking a lead against Slovenia, then holding on for dear life, to be fair, but then playing England the way they should. And I feel like the Danes are a good defensive side against a German team that really are just going to be out there playing aggressively to try to keep the fans on their side. It's been a really rough run for the Germans, who had automatically qualified as hosts for this competition, but there wasn't a lot of love throughout Deutschland for the chances of this German national team. They sacked their manager for the first time in country's history. Or at least the DFB's history, Deutschland Fußballbund, I believe, or whatever it's called. I'm interested in the Denmark side. I'm waiting to see if there maybe will be some Germany money hitting. I would expect that will continue until maybe a few minutes before kickoff on Saturday evening here in Germany, and in afternoon here in the United States. I think the Danes are the side I want here. I lean along to under as well. I feel like if you thought the match day 3 of the group stage, when teams needed results, was going to be a defensive result as it was, I think it's going to be even more in the knockouts, especially for a road team like the Danes. So I'm very interested in that under 2.25. Might see 2.5 come back as we had that initially, and I'll be holding out hope to see a +1 to get a very important push on a single goal loss from Denmark. Of course, everyone will be sending the goalkeeper forward late in matches when trailing, and that does make the risk of an empty net goal even higher. But that's part of the game, and I've kind of learned not to be so concerned about that. In terms of the two advanced number, Germany minus 370 to move on, Denmark nearly 3-1 at plus 295. That's up 6.75% from plus 275 when I first logged it. Germany from minus 350 to minus 370 is an increase of 5.41%. As you'd expect, I think the Germans getting bet at home, but I think this could be a very dangerous matchup. All these matchups should be dangerous, even if we get to big underdogs, which we'll come to next with England and Slovakia. England currently a 1.25 goal favorite. Total is 2.25, juiced almost all the way to over, with more juice on the Slovakians, maybe a little bit surprisingly compared to all the English love. And I would fully expect England to be bet until this kickoff, though they have not covered against the spread yet this tournament and have looked horrible. Honestly, as I kind of joked on Straight Out of Vegas last night with Scott Seidenberg. If you haven't listened to that podcast, go ahead and check it out on the Apple Podcast or really wherever your podcast. But I'm looking and trying to collect money to keep Gareth Southgate in his role as head man or manager of the English national team. He's a disaster, and I don't expect any improvements from the English national team. They do get to face the Slovakian side that have questions at goalkeeper, questions scoring goals. But Slovakians are going to sit in defense and will try to hold on for dear life, literally until the end, even I think if they're trailing by a single goal. Stanislav Lobotka in the center of midfield will be huge for trying to possess the ball and relieve pressure. And I think the Slovakians, I mean, they know that they're the inferior side here, and they'll be working like crazy to try to keep England out. I think that plays really well, especially getting more than a goal, because England will turn into the most conservative thing you could ever think of as soon as they have a lead. So that really makes the Slovakian plus 1.25. Anything over that single goal of insurance is very, very important. And I think it plays to under 2.25 as well. In terms of the two advanced numbers, England minus 575 to get through, Slovakia plus 430. That number has not moved since I've been tracking it. So Slovakia big underdogs, and the biggest question is how they're going to score. So I'm not sure I'm as interested in England going out here. I'm really just hoping England continue, but win a close match or maybe an extra time. So we get our spread handicap and maybe potentially the under as well. Any Slovakian goal will certainly be a big problem for under, but I think it will force England into breaking Slovakia down and certainly leave England open to be counterattacked where their defense is their weakest point. Moving next to another Sunday match, we have Spain and Georgia. Probably the biggest discrepancy of all the land. Looks like Sunday will be, at least based on the odds, not as competitive as Saturdays for sure, and probably the least competitive day for all this competition. Spain, a 2-goal favorite right now. All the juice on Georgia. Over-under is 2.75. Juice all the way to over. In terms of movement on this one, I don't see a lot of it, honestly. The Spanish have looked like probably the best team in this tournament, I gotta say. The Germans, you could certainly argue, but I think losing or trailing Switzerland the whole time at home was not really a great sign for them. With that said, I think the Georgians, we've seen exactly how they're going to play. It is sit back and try to counter. It worked perfectly to start against Portugal, taking an early lead, and it was amazing that they held on for a victory. I think the biggest upset in the Euro tournament history, at least if you look at FIFA club rankings. And that was a big, big upset. Got Georgia through to the knockout stages, knocked out Hungary, and ultimately was huge and gets us. And really, if you played, I don't know, so I'm still waiting for someone to show me a Georges Mikatadze Golden Boot ticket. I'm still so pissed I didn't bet him to score against Portugal, as I had it queued up and just ran out of time. And then also really thought about just doing it before the tournament, because he was clearly going to be on penalties over Vicha Kvaratskhelia, who's probably the biggest name in the Georgian side. But he's more of the creator, and Mikatadze is the finisher. The big question, though, is will they have opportunities against Spain, who are not really the possession team they were under their previous manager, Luis Enrique, who left for Paris Saint-Germain. But ultimately, the Spanish have looked awesome, and it's really hard to see them losing this matchup, to say the least. They're the biggest favorite by far. The Georgia's 2 advanced number has certainly gotten bet down. I'll get to that in a second. As for the total here, 2.75 is gigantic for a Georgian side that's going to sit and defend this whole time. The big question is when that Spain first goal goes in, how does Georgia change? I imagine they still stay in a very defensive setup, as we saw them do against... well, I guess they beat Portugal, but they were pretty defensive, I guess, in both their matches until they came out late and made a really bad mistake to send their goalkeeper up to try to get an equalizer in their first round match. But it didn't matter, because they somehow slayed the dragon and beat Portugal and made it through this leg of the competition. Unfortunately, it might end here based on where the numbers are suggesting. But I do like Georgia. That second goal, that +2, is very important. It's very juiced at the moment. I think 1.75 is probably enough to keep me away, though it's certainly a big, big spread. The very juice +2 I like, and it's correlated to under 2 3/4. But we might see a 3 before kickoff on Sunday, and I will certainly be waiting for that. The push on 3 is essential. A nice another mechanism to protect yourself. In terms of two advanced number, initially Spain were minus 1,100, so you'd have to bet 1,100 United States dollars to win 100. That has dropped 14% down to minus 965. Georgia started plus 715. $100 would win you $715. That's dropped to 650 on that $100 bet, down 10%. So some movement coming in on Georgia. I think it's surprising to me, to say the least, because the numbers have kind of have shrunk, and that's clearly not just a margin change from BetOnline or SportsBetting.ag. That is Georgia getting bet in some way, and they do have some firepower. The biggest question, how can Georgia defend? And ultimately, the Spanish pace in the wings is not as important against a low block that will be sitting in defense this entire matchup. But of course, any quick counters or something like that, that's where Spain will be most dangerous. I think Georgia's game plan will try to deny that as much as they can. We'll still be making an ultimate best bet end of show, 2-1 on those so far on these 3 match days. Stay tuned for that. If you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out. Patreon.com/says a real _ G Warner. Best spot to get all my plays, leans, write-ups, everything across all sports. Plus, we got plenty of podcasts coming out on the Betting Pitch Podcast Network. Baseball, we are, I think, is it 6-0 or is it 8-0? I think we're 8-0 in our last 4 podcasts. So we went undefeated in June at A. Brooks Betts and myself on the Major League Baseball podcast and the Betting Pitch Podcast Network. We still have a college basketball recap. That's eventually going to come, but maybe I should stop plugging it because who knows when that's going to get recorded. But the NBA draft just going and happening does help to give us some idea of who's going to be on what team next year. Plus an NFL futures episode coming out, _Schnicker. That will be coming out sooner rather than later. We had a great end of the season and playoffs. Sad that the season had to end in the Super Bowl. But, you know, winners are winners. And I guess the playoffs are the best time to focus and find some victories. Moving to Monday, July 1st, we have France and Belgium. Currently, France, a half a goal favorite. Over under is 2.25. Choose very heavily to under. A little bit more juice, just a couple cents on the other side for Belgium. In terms of where this number has moved, it really hasn't. I got no movement at all on juice or sides or total numbers. So really what we're looking at here are France, who's shockingly did not win their group, drawing with Poland after conceding a second chance penalty kick from Robert Lewandowski. And then Austria somehow stealing the group. Huge, and definitely throws off the bracket. But the Belgians also, with their goalless draw and their final match, very, very risky considering everyone in that group finished on the same number of points and it came down to tiebreakers. But the Belgians are in a different place here where they're not the big favorite. They're not going to be responsible for doing everything, and they're instead going to be facing a French side that have really not scored a single goal this entire competition besides a penalty spot kick from Kylian Mbappe. They won against Austria with an own goal. Certainly have deserved more scoring based on the dominance, but it's really hard to trust a French favorite that haven't scored a goal themselves outside of a penalty this entire tournament. France will be very conservative once they take a lead. That's Didier Deschamps' way. The Belgians are a different situation where they just can't really finish their chances, but that's been against teams sitting in defense, knowing that Belgium were the highest ranked team in their group. Now Belgium gets to play as an underdog, and I think that will suit them a lot better. I lean to the Belgian side getting a half of a goal, though it does feel like that is a pretty cheap price for France. Maybe the market is suggesting that. I've kind of found in soccer betting that if you are looking at an underdog that looks very short, that's usually the side you want to have. Certainly that works with my strategy in this sport, dogs and unders. If anyone's been listening to this podcast for the years I've been doing it. But I think the French just really haven't proven enough. A lot of questions about Belgium, especially getting whistled off, and Kevin De Bruyne has just taken the team away, not to even clap the fans after their last match that ended up getting them through to this round. But clearly there's been a lot of problems in that dressing room or that camp. Those problems still exist, but I guess at this point they've made it through. That's all they can do, and they've got a really, really tough draw with France and then potentially getting Portugal in the next round. But until that happens, focus on the French And we'll see what Kylian Mbappe can do with another potential penalty or what ends up happening. Over under at 2.25, also very low. But I think it plays into the idea that this is going to be a really tight matchup, that France will really try to keep this a 1-0 victory. I don't love that for their strategy, but I do love it as an under player. It doesn't really work so much for a +1/2, but the Belgians should have some chances here against a French side that are full of mistakes in the back. Diop Upamecano still starting over Konate just seems incredibly ridiculous to me. But Didier Deschamps does not listen to anyone, and why would he with all his success? So I feel like he certainly could have accomplished more with by far the most talented team in every tournament he plays in, including the World Cup. So in terms of a two advanced number, we have France -235, Belgium +195 right now. No movement since I've been logging that. I guess that is one of the smaller numbers to get through. So this is looking like, at least from an odds maker's perspective, besides Austria and Turkey, which we'll get to later, looks like the most competitive of all the first round or knockout round matches. We'll move next to the nightcap on July 1st. We have Portugal and Slovenia. Currently, Portugal a 1.25 goal favorite with slightly more juice than Slovenia. Over under is 2.5, juice very heavily to under here. In terms of movement on this matchup, there's been none. We'll get to this, of course, as these match days and the matches get closer. But Portugal rotated their side for their match day 3, so it's probably not as bad of a thing that they lost to Georgia. They weren't playing their best, but I still think that Slovenia can cause big problems. I've backed Slovenia against the spread and under in each of their matches and have cashed each one so far. See no reason to get off of that, especially because the Portuguese, while they are the most talented and literally just disembowel their opponents through qualifying for this competition, they have not looked the same in this actual on German soil Euro 2024. Cristiano Ronaldo looks like a big distraction yet again. But Roberto Martinez has been literally playing the PR guns to try to make him seem as important to the side as he possibly can. I don't agree with it. The Slovenians are going to make this very tough on Portugal. I love Matej Kek and his strategy. Plus, there's a really great finisher up top that doesn't need many chances and is due for a goal, and that is Benjamin Šeško from Red Bull Leipzig. So I like under here. I like the 1.25 as well. I think there's going to be a ton of close matches. No different from match day 3, where anyone following on Patreon or on pregame, you would have seen a very successful run in terms of two advanced number, we have -575 on Portugal. $100 bet on Slovenia will win you 430 plus 430. No movement that I've tracked so far. Would imagine that a lot of favorites get bet, but after seeing the Georgian number fall down pretty significantly, I'm very wary to see what underdogs get bet as we move up. This is the last of the round of 16 match day on Tuesday, July 2nd. We have Romania and the Netherlands. Romania 1-goal underdog. All the juice on Netherlands on no road here. Everyone's on a neutral site. Over under is 2.25, just very heavily to over / all the way. You might see 2.5. In terms of moving on this number, I have seen none here either. It looks like these numbers are pretty well baked, or at least are pretty set in stone. But I'm sure we'll see some movement on match day. Romania had an incredible start and are here, won their group because they beat Ukraine so badly in the opener of their group, whatever it was, E or something like that. I think the Romanians certainly didn't look great in a lot of their other competitions, got a very fortunate penalty that got them to win this group and really got them through to the next round, because the loss would have kept them out. But they're here. They get a Dutch side who have been, I think, better than maybe expected, with a lot of injuries coming into this competition, but have certainly performed, I think better than expected. Looked like they could have won the group, but ended up really struggling with Austria. Would have been a wild goal differential type of tiebreaker scenario if they had drawn just like France did. But I think they would have scored more goals. So that would have been huge. They also had a VAR goal disallowed against France, which might have clinched and secured them the group. Sorry to my guy Van Zach for not getting that victory. But the Romanians are going to go in and they're going to play really defensively. They're going to try to keep the Netherlands out. I think that +1 is essential. It looks like this is going to climb to 1.25 just based on where the juice is suggesting. I think if you're backing Romania, you want to grab a +1 at minimum. I think under 2.25 is also interesting because the Netherlands have been a lot more defensive than I think most have expected. Ronald Koeman in his second stint as Netherlands manager has been a lot more conservative than Louis van Gaal before him, who was just all out trying to outscore everyone. I think that plays better for the Netherlands against the bigger clubs and bigger nations, but not against Romania. It'll keep Romania in this matchup, and I think getting that full goal of insurance is huge. Plus, I like under as well. Surprise, surprise. In terms of two advanced number, Netherlands -465 and Romania +360. That has not moved. So we will move along to that last matchup, as it looks like there's not been a lot of futures activity, to say the least. Last but not least, we'll go to Austria as I wear their Österreich t-shirt. I'm not sure if that is visible. Hopefully it is. Maybe. Anyway, maybe not. But the Austrians are a half a goal favorite to Turkey. Turkey, slightly more juice, -112 versus -108. So not much of a difference. Over under is 2.5. And it is a lot heavier juice to under, but not all the way just yet. -114 to the under right now versus a -106 on over. The Turkish, they have a huge population across Germany after World War II. A history lesson, a lot moved there after, I guess, Nazi Germany fell. And so it's probably why you see a lot of doner kebab across the country. I miss that. Would love some right now. But I think it's a huge part for Turkey to have a big crowd fan base for energy. And I think it really pushed them over the line in a match. Looked like they were kind of struggling even against 10 men in Czechia or Czech Republic, as they were known previously. In terms of where this number has gone, surprise, surprise, hasn't moved at all just yet. Like I said, expect a lot of moves on game day or match day starting tomorrow. But the Turks, that's the side I like. Austria, they were awesome to win their group and certainly were a darling come into this tournament, have certainly delivered upon that. The big question, though, can Austria as a favorite score goals? They weren't really a favorite to anyone besides Poland in their group stage. They will be a favorite against Turkey. Turkey should be sitting in defensively in a more conservative style, trying to protect their defense and let their young wingers get into space in a counterattacking fashion. The problem is when Turkey sit back, the Austrian press will be certainly deployed, and that will be the biggest issue, I think, for the Austrians. This does feel like probably one of the underdogs I'm least interested in, because I feel like while Austria are not a dominant team by any means, they are able to force turnovers, and the Turkish side, I think, is ripe for making mistakes. Under 2.5 seems interesting to me because I feel like there is going to be a lot of Austrian counter press or just pressing Turkey in their own area, and I wonder if Turkey will respond with a bunch of long balls. Usually the good defensive teams will do that, and that'll put them in a good position to really just have a lot of stalemate. But I wonder if Turkey will fall into the traps, because that'll put them in a really tough position to get through this matchup. So that is, I think, the recap of the entire match day. Don't really have enough time. Unfortunately, I have a call in 4 minutes to get on. So I won't be able to get through the futures portion of it all, but I gave you two advanced numbers and might be doing a little bit more, or maybe you should join my Patreon, patreon.com, just a real_G Warner, and I will go through some future stuff on there. I guess that's probably the best way to do it, is privately for those of you. And thank you for all the new subscribers. Let's see if I can pull those up while I'm recording, just forever doing a nice little multitask. But time to plug some things. If you're not a member of my Patreon, I've already mentioned that. But if you're not subscribed to this podcast, please do so at the real_G Warner on YouTube and on Instagram. That's where these reels or shorts will go. Plus, there's plenty going on the Betting the Pitch podcast network platform, on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. If you could leave a 5-star review, it'd be huge for the search rankings, get more of these podcasts out. The more people watching, the more people listening, all that sort of stuff, the more motivated I will be to record more and more and more. In terms of, I guess, other podcasts coming out, we have the Tuesday night podcast out of A Brooks Bets that'll be out, and of course, we'll be doing pregame stuff. Did a podcast last night for Friday Major League Baseball card, going through every matchup. That is out now. Plus, also joined the Straight Out of Vegas AM team, I guess, which is now down to Scott Seidenberg, and joined him last night as well, talking soccer, Copa America, which we'll be doing a podcast for that for match day 3 once we finish match day 2 tonight on Friday. So plenty coming out. Also want to thank my new Patreon subscribers. Haven't tiered this up or haven't mentioned names in a while, but thank you for all the new joiners: Billy Govia, Joe Susek, Michael Spadali, Cameron Davolt, Sean Mayton, Joe Soderij, Richie King, Brandon Anderson, and Chris Taylor, Brent Hanshin, excuse me, Eric Kiola. I think I've mentioned you before, but there's another mention. Thank you all for your support, and I really appreciate you coming on board. It's been a really great run, and we will continue that going forward. So it's time for the ultimate best bet. So let's just get into it while we're here, and let's start right now. Hey, this is Real_G Warner. This is Betting the Pitch, the European 2024 Football Championship edition, going through the knockout rounds, the round of 16, as we finally got to the best part of this tournament, the playoffs, where I'm trying to capitalize on a 16-2 match day 3 run, 89%. I cannot promise I will match those numbers, but certainly that is the goal, and I'll be shooting for it. There's so much to like on this card. I feel like it's going to be a very competitive round, just like match day 3 was. If you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/real_G Warner, the best spot to get all my plays, leans, write-ups, everything. You get all my plays across the soccer tournament, the Copa America as well, plus Major League Baseball and any sort of futures that I'm putting together for next season's NFL, plus plenty going forward on other sports as well. For my best bet on this episode, I'm going to go with Romania and Netherlands under 2.25 goals. You might get 2.5 before kickoff, but I got to do what I got to do with live lines. So Romania under 2.25 goals against Netherlands. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll talk to you all very soon. And as always, have a great evening, great weekend, and let's win some money.